I wasn't asleep. I just didn't want her to know I was awake. It was late afternoon, the kind of quiet hour when the house settles into stillness. I had been lying on the couch, eyes closed, not really resting, just thinking the way older people do when the day feels longer than it used to. I heard her footsteps in the kitchen. My daughter had come over to check on me. That's what she calls it now. She brings groceries sometimes, straightens things that don't need straightening, adjusts the thermostat as if I've forgotten how it works. I let her. It makes her feel useful. She thought I was sleeping. That's when her voice changed. You don't notice it until you do. The difference between the voice your children use with you and the voice they use when you're not part of the conversation. She answered her phone quietly. "I'm at Dad's," she whispered. Pause, then a soft sigh. "I know. It's just, I don't know how much longer we can keep doing this." My chest tightened. Keep doing what? I stayed perfectly still. You learn at my age how to control your breathing. She walked toward the hallway, but the house carries sound. I could still hear her. "It's just so much responsibility," she said. "I feel like my whole life revolves around him lately." Revolves around him. I wanted to sit up. I wanted to say I never asked for that, but I didn't move. There's something about hearing the truth when it isn't meant for you that freezes you in place. She kept talking. "I love him, obviously, but I can't keep dropping everything every time he calls. I don't call often. That's what hurt." I replayed the last month in my mind. 2 calls, maybe 3. One about the car making a strange sound. One about a doctor's appointment I wasn't sure I could drive myself to. One just to hear her voice, dropping everything. I realized then that in her life, I had become an interruption, not a father, an obligation. Her voice softened again. Sometimes I wish he would consider assisted living or something. It would make everything easier." Easier. There's that word again. I kept my eyes closed, because if I opened them, something between us would crack. I lay there for the entire call, not because I couldn't move, because I didn't trust myself to speak. When she said assisted living, something inside me didn't shatter. It shifted, quietly, like a foundation settling in a way you can't immediately see, but you know will change the structure. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't angry. She sounded tired, and somehow that was worse. If she had sounded resentful, I could have fought it, defended myself, reminded her of the years I carried her when she was sick, when she was afraid, when she needed rides and money and late-night reassurance. But she sounded overwhelmed, and I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to see. I am no longer the center of her emotional gravity. I am a variable in her schedule. The call lasted maybe 7 minutes. 7 minutes that rearranged decades of fatherhood in my mind. After she hung up, she walked back into the living room. I felt her presence near the couch. I kept my breathing slow and even. She adjusted the blanket over my legs. That small gesture almost broke me. Love and burden can coexist in the same hand. That's the part no one prepares you for. She stood there for a moment, watching me. I wondered what she saw. An old man, fragile, dependent, temporary. Not the father who once carried her on his shoulders. Not the man who fixed her bike and taught her to drive and waited up when she missed curfew. Just a body that might fall. Just a responsibility that might escalate. When she left, she kissed my forehead gently. "I'll call you tomorrow," she whispered. The door closed. I opened my eyes. The room looked the same, but it felt different. For years, I have tried not to be a burden. I've downplayed aches, avoided asking for help unless absolutely necessary, driven myself to appointments I probably shouldn't have, pretended I wasn't as tired as I was, not because I'm proud, because I don't want to become heavy in someone else's life. And yet, despite all that restraint, I still landed in a conversation framed as too much. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because of anger, because of grief. There's a particular grief that comes when you realize your children have begun managing you emotionally, the way you once managed them physically. The roles reverse gradually, but hearing it spoken out loud made it undeniable. The next morning, she called, bright, cheerful. "Good morning, Dad. How are you feeling?" I almost told her. I almost said, "I heard you." Instead, I said, "I'm fine." That word felt heavier than any confession. The morning after I overheard her, I made coffee more slowly than usual. Every small movement felt deliberate, measured, as if I were testing how much of myself still felt independent. I carried the cup to the window and stood there, watching nothing in particular, replaying her words. "I don't know how much longer we can keep doing this." It wasn't hatred. It wasn't abandonment. It was exhaustion. And that realization forced me into a corner I had avoided for years. I could stay silent and pretend I hadn't heard her. Or I could confront something far more uncomfortable than betrayal. Aging. Not the abstract version we joke about. The logistical version. The version that interrupts careers. That rearranges weekends. That creates quiet fear in adult children who don't know how to juggle everything at once. For days, I said nothing. I watched her more closely during visits. The way she checked her phone. The way she scanned the room subtly, as if assessing risk. The way she asked, "Did you take your medication?" in a tone that wasn't patronizing, but cautious. I began to see something I had resisted. She wasn't trying to get rid of me. She was afraid. Afraid of something happening when she wasn't there. Afraid of the call in the middle of the night. Afraid of failing in a role she never trained for. I had framed her words as rejection. What if they were fear disguised as frustration? That thought softened something in me, but it didn't erase the sting. Because here is the difficult truth. Love at this stage of life is complicated. Your children love you, and they are also overwhelmed by you. Both can be true. I invited her over one evening, not for groceries, not for errands, just to talk. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where she had done homework decades ago. "I heard you the other day," I said quietly. Her face drained of color. "Heard me?" On the phone. Silence fell between us. The kind of silence that decides whether a relationship fractures or deepens. Tears formed in her eyes immediately. "I didn't mean, I know," I interrupted gently. She covered her face with her hands. "I'm just so scared all the time," she admitted. "I'm scared something's going to happen. I'm scared I won't be there. I'm scared I'm not doing enough." There it was. Not resentment, fear. And in that moment, something inside me shifted again. I realized I had been protecting my pride more than protecting our honesty. "I don't want to be your whole life," I told her. "You're not," she said quickly, "but I feel like I am." That was the first time we both spoke without performance. I told her I understood the strain. I told her I didn't want her orbiting around me. I told her that if I ever chose assisted living, it would be because I decided it was right, not because she felt cornered. We cried. Not dramatically, quietly, as two adults who once knew each other in completely different roles. That conversation didn't fix everything. I still saw the fatigue in her eyes some days. She still saw the vulnerability in mine. But something changed. We stopped pretending. I began arranging backup plans that didn't rely solely on her. I explored community options. I hired help for small things I used to call her about. Not because she demanded it, because I chose it. And she relaxed, just slightly. I will not pretend that overhearing her didn't hurt. It did, deeply. But sometimes heartbreak is not proof of betrayal. It is proof that reality has finally caught up with illusion. I pretended to be asleep that afternoon. But what I really avoided was the truth that my independence has an expiration date, and my daughter, despite her exhaustion, still loves me enough to be afraid. That is not the story I wanted to hear, but it is the one that was waiting behind the whisper.